Welcome to Stage Explorations, where we interview the theater creatives and artists from the theater world, those who perform on stage that the audience sees, and those behind the theater stage that the audience almost never sees. I am a journalist and theater fan, Buell Brown, and today's guest is...
Hi, I'm Megan Dolan, and my play is Lemur Mom. And if you'd like to learn more about the play and hear what it's all about, listen to this conversation. And I hope you'll join me at the theater because it is a truly life-changing experience. Thank you.
So my first question is, when did you first fall in love with theater, and why did you have to be part of the theater world?
Oh, that's a great question. So I first fell in love with theater when I was a kid. I remember just dancing around my living room and singing to West Side Story. Like I always was in love with dance and theater and art. And then when I got into high school, I became a little more self-conscious, and the theater people were really weird. And so I kind of like shied away from it. But then in college, I was actually working at Marie Callender's as a waitress, and I was in college, and a friend of mine there was a director at Orange Coast College, and he was casting a scene from Glass Menagerie, the gentleman caller scene. And he just kept looking at me and looking at me, and he's like, "You'd be a perfect Laura." And I didn't know what he was talking about. And so he cast me in that. And we worked for 6 weeks on the gentleman caller scene, and it was just this magical experience. And he was a tremendous director, and I got to work with actually a pretty successful actor now. His name's David Denman, as the gentleman caller. And it was just, I just absolutely fell head over heels with acting. And he like set it to like Gershwin, song that kind of like swelled up. It was just this beautiful experience. And then we got asked to be in this one act festival, and then I was hooked, and I changed my major and became a theater major after that. I guess I was about 20 when that happened.
When did you fall out of acting and writing? And when did acting and writing go from an interest to an obsession?
Oh, okay. Let's see. So when I was, in my 20s, I would only write when I was hit with inspiration to write. And I wrote my first solo show. It was called Blind Fish. And it was after a relationship that had just like exploded, and I was heartbroken, and I didn't know what to do with all these emotions, and it wasn't going away. It was like, a few years later, and I was in a theater company up in LA, and I just needed more of an outlet than the few plays they were doing, a year. And so I started writing this thing, and it just kind of flew out of me, and it was in rhyme. It was just it was almost like Dr. Seuss meets Shakespeare, but this very just this, it was just kind of unspooled in scenes of relationship. And so I put that up in, I think it was 2000. That was the first time I did that show. And it was such a emotions in my words and all of this just very juicy material. And that's when I really fell in love with writing and acting, and figuring out a way like, if I'm writing, then I can always be working on something. I don't have to wait for the opportunities to come to me. So I'd say that's when, but I didn't start writing like disciplined writing until probably 10 years later. I would write sporadically. Yeah. And then what really kind of got me writing more was after I had kids and I was living in Long Beach and couldn't drive up and be part of my theater company. So that's when I really started writing a lot more and a lot more regularly.
To add on to that, what is your process in creating a play?
Oh, gosh. Well, so for a long time, I would do what's called morning pages from the Artist's Way, where you just wake up and write, for 3 pages, just dump the kind of stream of consciousness. So when I wrote Lemur Mom, that's kind of what I did. I had all of these images in my head, because Lemur Mom is about, well, my son was diagnosed with autism at 5, and I felt like I am not the right mom to handle this. Like, he's going to be at a disadvantage because I'm not a type A, got it together mom. And so as I was going through all of these appointments and support groups and, psychologist visits, I would come home and write about it just to capture and because it helps me process how I feel about it. Because I also have ADHD, and I didn't know that at the time. I found out when I was 43, but yeah, so it just helps me to process it, and then probably, I don't know, a year or two later after the diagnosis, I just sat down and kind of wrote out every scene that I had in my head, things that I was missing. And then once I had that big kind of, I call it, Anne Lamott calls it a shitty first draft. Then I went back and tried to kind of formulate the story and worked with my director, Wendy Hammers, who was key in finding the arc of the story. Because it's so hard when you're the artist to kind of see what it is. It's just all of these scenes, but it really helps to have an outside eye. And I also had different writing groups as well, and I would bring pieces into writing groups and they would give feedback. And then I started performing pieces at a show called Expressing Motherhood. So I'd take one piece, work it, hone it, and perform it there to see if it worked. And then I would kind of have like that piece in place. And then I think I did that for 3 or 4 of the pieces, and then decided to book a theater and just try to see if it worked, fill in the missing parts. So that's how that one kind of came together.
Theater experience. Why is it such a unique format, both for the audience and for the actor, compared to movies and TVs? Why is it so unique? Why is theater such a unique platform?
Oh my God. So my husband and I just saw the play at the Amundsen. It was room 222, or no, not room 22. It was 222. And it was like this ghost story. And the entire audience, we were just jumping at the same time. And it was the most incredible experience. And I thought about exactly that. I was like, why is theater so different? It feels holy to me. It feels when it's good, when everybody is really invested in it, it just feels like a synchronicity of like hearts and minds. And it's a relief from all the anxiety of life. It just can really transport you and just make you feel part of something bigger. I feel like there's unity. Yeah, that's I've always felt. I never was raised with any religion, because I felt like when I found the theater, like that feels like a holy place to me, like church to me in a way.
Where did the idea for Lemur Mom come from, and why did you have to write it and perform it?
Okay, so the idea for Lemur Mom came from kind of desperation, and because I am an actor and a writer, and that's how I process things. When my son was first diagnosed with autism, I just had to start documenting all of the appointments and experiences that we were having, and just little things that would kind of trigger me. I had to write it because I was just so flooded with everything that was happening. And I kept getting in these spirals of self-doubt and kind of like just like a we're screwed feeling of like, how are we going to incorporate this in our lives? And like one of the scenes is the first time I went to a support group, the first thing these ladies said to me was, "Oh, you have to hire a lawyer and sue the school district." And I was like, "What are you talking?" Like that was not even in my consciousness. And so I couldn't process the kind of person I was going to have to become in order to advocate for my son. So I had to start writing it. And I was in like an artist group at the time. And so I would share these things with the group, and people really, it resonated with people, which gave me relief, because I wasn't alone in feeling like this. So that's why I had to write it, because I thought, if there's other mothers or parents out there that feel this way, this could be a service. It wouldn't just be me processing it. It could be, a way to bring other people relief or recognition. So that's why I had to write it. And then one of the things, it's kind of a blessing and a curse, I really write to my own performance style. So sometimes I worry that if you read it on the page, you're not going to hear it the way I want it to be heard. So that's a real challenge, to learn how to write to make it sound like the way my voice sounds. So I had to perform it, because I just knew there's certain things I knew how to make a scene land, or I knew that this could be I hoped that this could be funny in this, this certain way. Like I had one of the, is it okay to go into one of the scenes? So one of the first scene I wrote was when we were meeting with this psychologist, and she was giving us the diagnosis, and she had been out for a couple of weeks. Like we hadn't seen her for a couple of weeks. And I was noticing she had all these like bruises on her face. Like there was just weird things about her face. And as she's like telling us this about my son, I'm realizing that she's just had plastic surgery. And so I'm like processing all of this information. So that's the first scene I wrote, was this like, what's going on with her face? And then she's telling us this, and it's like, but wait, look at this. It's my own inner monologue as this devastating information is coming out. And I just knew, I was like, I think this can work. I think I can make this work, and it was so satisfying. I worked on that piece for about 6 months before I presented it, and it did work, and it was just so exciting. So I knew I had to perform it, because I just felt like it was very specific to me and my strengths.
What do you want the audience to get out Lemur Mom play production?
What I want people to take away from this show is, the main theme of the show is, I'm not the right mom. I'm not the right mom to handle this. And there is so much judgment, in parenting, even, in raising neurotypical kids. So if you have a kid that isn't neurotypical, you tend to compare yourself to the wrong people. You're like, so what I want people to take away is, and ultimately, I don't want to give anything away about the play, but where the character, where my character comes to at the end is different from where she begins. So what I want people to take away from it is people that don't have a direct connection to the autism world, or I want them to have a better understanding and maybe develop a little more compassion, through humor. There's a lot of humor in the show, and that really disarms people. And then for people who, are in this world, I would like for them to walk away with a little bit of relief, and that I'm not alone, and that, our family isn't, doing it wrong. That, and I just like a more of a sense of like, we're all in this together.
When the audiences leave Lemur Mom, what are 2 things you want them to remember about someone who lives in the world of autism, whether it's about you or your son?
So when someone walks out, of Lemur Mom, I guess 2 things I'd like them to remember. One, I have a line in the show that my son's doctor said that, oh my gosh, rings in my head all of the time. But she said that things that for neurotypical people are, innocuous or like an annoyance, for my son are invasive. It's an invasion. And so I'd like people to hold that, and to remember that when you encounter a kid at a party who won't eat whatever's being offered or something, rather than just being like, oh, he's, they're picky and they're entitled, or to maybe just have for a second, like, oh, well, maybe there's texture issues, or maybe, just something more than just the dismissive kind of attitude that I've encountered a lot. And then the other thing I'd like people to take away, just, let's see. Yeah, is just having a more expansive view, and really looking at their own internal bias and investigating it, which people have to be aware of it to do that. So there's a lot of people that aren't, but maybe there's people that are open to that and just haven't really looked at it, and seeing this show could crack something like that open. Like, I never thought of it that way before. I'd like people to have that, which in performing the show, in 2018, 2019, and early 2020, there were people who would come who didn't have any connection to the special needs world, and did say, like, I never thought about it that way before. And that was like the biggest compliment, and felt really good when I heard that.
And the second part of that question is, what any myths you look forward to breaking or adding to? Only reason I ask that is that it frustrates me so much. Everybody thinks that every person with autism now is like the good doctor. So, is there, and there are myths about of all types of learning disability like that, but is there
Yeah.
anything else you're looking forward to talk about, or breaking or adding that people didn't think of?
Oh, that's a really, you know what? It feels to me there is some myth about like that people with autism aren't compassionate, or, have kind of a stuck kind of emotional life. And that is not my experience with my son at all. He's so incredibly observant, but sometimes it'll just take a while for him to process whatever it is he's been through. And then he can really, he'll open up about it when he's ready to open up about it. So that myth I'd like to dispel is like, no, they are emotionally intelligent. Um, and every person with autism is completely different in the way they process things, but just yeah, I think that needs to go. Like, I think it's just processed differently, and it isn't necessarily the way other people do it. But and let's see, and then also, so one of the things I worry about with my son a lot is he's so limited in what he will eat, and there's a whole section of that about that in the show. And so, but whenever I meet an adult who has weird eating things, like I get so excited because I'll be like, oh, but look, like they're functioning in the world and they're married, and they, it's either he's going to find a way to break out of it, or he's going to find a way to live with it. It's not going to limit him. So I guess I don't know, and maybe it's a myth for myself, is that there's a real problem if someone isn't eating in the way everyone else is eating, that it's frowned upon, or just dismissed. Like, I would like people to just have a different understanding of that. That it's not just being like indulgent, or you know catering to your kid. In some cases it's really an issue that is really hard to deal with. And sometimes there's other issues that are more important to deal with before you're handling that issue. If that makes sense.
Why should viewers attend the Lemur Mom? Well, no, why must the viewers attend the production of Lemur Mom, no matter where it's
Um,
being produced?
um, well, people should come. People must come see Lemur Mom because it is it's a joyous experience, and it's kind of startling, and because my character reveals things that that most you don't see most people reveal in these situations. Like, the internal monologue of my character is very open, very honest, very raw, and it's refreshing. And because it's yeah, and it's short. It's like a little over an hour, so there's no intermission. And it's a uplifting experience that will make people see things differently, hopefully. And it's very funny, hopefully.
So I always ask this question. I think it's more important because, well, as you know, and I know, a lot of stories are being told more, but I feel the learn not enough in the, I always say handicap, but in the disabled world, not enough people really talk about that world. So tell us why more voices of the community must be heard in the theater world.
Hmm. I think more voices from the special needs community need to be heard in the theater world, because it just creates more understanding and more compassion, especially hearing it from the source. Um, and I'm kind of a representative. I mean, I do have ADHD, which actually in the show kind of gets discovered and revealed as well. And what's helpful for me is I struggle in so many areas in my life, organization and time management, and all these things that I didn't know were related to ADHD till I got diagnosed in my 40s. But I have always been able to communicate with an audience and tell stories. Like, that's just something that I innately, have, and it's valuable to people. So when I'm performing this show, and then people come up to me afterwards and have, they have tears in their eyes, and they're grateful, it gives me a sense of value. And whereas I struggle in so many other areas of my life, and as a mom and compare myself to other moms and how I don't measure up, I have this superpower, if you will, to connect with people. And that gives me a sense of value. So I feel like if other people, from the special needs community can find their voice, it could also uplift them in their, self-esteem and what they have to give to the world, to say like, oh, look, in this area, I can do this. Where a lot of people are like, how do you talk in front of people? And I'm like, that's not a problem for me. Like, how do you like clean out your refrigerator? Like, that those are the areas that I struggle. So that's what I've discovered for me. It's like, oh, this gives me a place in the world. This gives me something that I can share and give, and that makes me feel valuable.
Very important. What are your hopes and dreams for the future of Lemur Mom play productions?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So my hopes and dreams for Lemur Mom production. So when the last time I performed the show was February 2020, and it was going really strong. And we had just gone to Tucson and performed the show for a special engagement. And we had another booking in June. And then the pandemic happened, and it shut down for 3 years. So I had all these dreams of a Netflix special. Like I was just had really big dreams, and it's been put on hold. And a lot of things happened in these past 3 years that were very difficult for our family. So now I kind of feel like my dreams have been scaled back a little bit. And I'm very excited to present it again and get it on its feet. And my hopes for it right now is that it can go from, just getting it on its feet again to having another run somewhere. And then hopefully, I'd love for it to get picked up by, it could be part of a theater company's season, or if I would just like it to get the ball rolling again. I'm a little apprehensive to have the big dreams again, but just getting it started again, because it is. And I'm excited. I'm a different person than I was 3 years ago, and I'm excited to see what I bring to it now. I have a bit of a different perspective. Because I lost my mom in September, and she's a part of the story, and it just brings a different angle to it, a different poignancy, I feel like.
Anything else I missed about your play, about your family, or anything else you want to mention, but especially with the plays? Anything I missed that you want to
the only thing I'd want to mention is when I did the play previous, I used all of our real names, because I'm just not imaginative in that way. And my son, who's now in middle school, and when I first started performing this was in third grade, he requested that I change the names. So I've done that. I've changed everyone's name but my own. And so I guess what I want to emphasize is this, this play is based on true events, but timelines have been condensed and things have been, heightened. So I just want to give it a sense of like, this is a story. It's not necessarily exactly my story. Just I feel better about having a little space in that. I'm Megan Dolan, and my play is Lemur Mom, and I really think you should come see it, because it is hilarious and it's joyous, and it really brings the audience together, and you will walk out with a different perspective on the special needs world. So I can't wait to see you there. Thanks.
Thank you for listening or watching this podcast episode of Stage Explorations. To learn more about the theater creative and more theater creatives and artists on Stage Explorations, go to www.stageexplorations.com. Once again, that is www.stageexplorations.com. There is no space between stage and explorations. You may find more videos, podcasts, and information about this theater creative and other theater creatives and artists on Stage Explorations YouTube channel. Looking forward to seeing you in the theater.